Okay. So hi, everyone. This is Mike Smith, Network Development Lead for Curva Coaching EMEA. And welcome to our next encounter in our series, A Love of Coaching. We're delighted today to have with us a big supporter of Curva Coaching over the years, René Meulensteen. In his early career, René worked as the assistant to the legendary Wiel Curva in the UAE. And in 2008, became the first team coach for Manchester United, working alongside manager Alex Ferguson to secure an amazing record of 3 Premier League titles, 2 League Cups, the UEFA Champions League, and the FIFA Club World Cup. So René went on to be manager of Fulham, and he is currently the assistant coach for the Australian national team. So René, a big welcome to you.
Thank you, Mike.
And as always, Alfs Galustian, co-founder of Curva Coaching. 40 years of coach and player development around the world, including many collaborations with over 50 professional clubs and 20 national federations. So welcome, Alf.
Good to be with you, and especially René.
Okay, so let's dive into our first question. Now, you've both spent a lifetime in the world of coaching. René, where did this love of coaching come from?
It started very early with me, Mike. For the listeners, I was born in Holland, in a small village in the southeast of Holland, close to the German border. The local team was not playing at any significant level, but obviously we just started there. I was fortunate to get into the club earlier than you was allowed. Actually, I started playing at 7, but you could actually only get in when you were 9. But as I went through and as I get older, I actually got asked when I was 16 if I could help one of the local coaches, coaching the 8 or 9 years old, and which I did. And I think it only lasted 3 weeks before that coach had to stop coaching because of his work, and I just carried on. So I've been in coaching since I was 16. So let me quickly count. That's about 41 years, and I just felt a love for it straight away.
Yeah. Is it a love of the game, or is it a love of the interaction with players? That's a long history, and a long career. What sustained that?
It's both. I think if you ask a lot of coaches, they will always say playing the game yourself is the most beautiful thing there is. But the second most beautiful thing is coaching, and is giving something to the kids, the players, the boys and girls to make them better and see them progress and see them having success. Because if you create an environment where kids have success, you breed confidence. And when kids are confident, they want to take initiative. And these are two very important qualities of life anyway. And you can stimulate that through good coaching.
Yeah, marvelous. Yeah. Alf, from your love of coaching, again, probably a similar time span, I think.
Yes, Mike. So I think very simply, it was starting playing at 6 years old, around the time René, and loving the game and going to coaching because I had to finish with the game, playing the game. So it was, it was not a natural thing, but if I wanted to stay in the game. So I didn't have the experience, the young René coming in so young and learning so much. I came in my late 20s, and but it was basically to stay in the game. I think I maintained my love through inspiration from other people too. So one being Wiel Curva, but then Stanley Matthews, and then the Chelsea coach when I was youth team player, Ted Drake. And it was both love and inspiration.
René, Alf there mentions Wiel Curva. Given your early roots and experience with Wiel, what was it about the Curva methodology and approach that first attracted you?
It's a funny story, actually, Mike, because I got first introduced to Wiel Curva whilst I was walking into the next door village. And came past a bookstore, and Wiel's book was in there, the plan for the ideal player. And I looked at it, and I thought, I walked in and I grabbed the copy, And I just sort of went through the pages and I saw all those pictures of the different techniques that caught my eye straight away. But what really hit home to me was the preface. And I read the preface and I thought to myself, you don't need to have university or a high degree to understand that this is what football and football coaching and education is about. So I took the copy home, I studied it, left, right, and center. I tried to do all the little moves in my front and backyard. And I felt that I was actually quite good at it. I could very quickly, but then I started to implement them myself whilst playing with my mates and my friends. And they could see that I was changing. So they were asking, how do you do that? Where's that coming from? So that was my first initial contact. And then obviously there's a whole other story how I ended up actually with Wheel in Qatar, but then I'm going over the minute. So I'll pass it on back to you, Mike.
Yeah, man, maybe we'll bring that up later on. And Alf, again, going back in history for that early start that René describes, a lot of time has passed since then. And how, just briefly, would you summarize how Curva coaching has evolved over these 30 or 40 years?
Yeah, so Charlie and I first met Will in 1984 in Philadelphia at one of these soccer conventions. And at that time, basically, if you think ball mastery has always been the foundation of Curva coaching, and so it was at that time. At that time, for example, the ball mastery curriculum had 26 moves, which was, Will had the alphabet A to Z, right, which was 26. And so if I talk about the evolution of that, and then if you think there's ball mastery moves and there's game moves. So in the ball mastery moves, there was 26 in 84. There's 106 now. In the game moves, there was 16, and now there's 79. The number doesn't matter, but what I'm saying is that just that evolution from 84 vis-a-vis the curriculum expanding. And then, when I met Will, certainly, I didn't really see a curriculum. I saw, like René say, inspirational philosophy and simplicity, the basis of actually teaching. So I think, if anything, Charlie and I, over these almost 40 years, have developed a curriculum, which a curriculum is drills and games, basically. So, you know, and the different structures that we've got copyrighted. So that's a curriculum that coaches then learn the drills and games. And then the method, which a method is different from a curriculum, I suppose. There was a method, but it wasn't explainable. And certainly in the last 10 years, with our work with Dr. Peter Bain, one of the world's top neurologists, explaining how the brain learns skills, actually endorsed really what we call the Curva Skills Bridge, which is planned deliberate practice of increasing difficulty. So in other words, if we've done anything, we had the inspiration of Will, we had the philosophy of Will, but maybe Charlie and I added a curriculum which is labeled and documented and with videos and books, et cetera, since 84, and a method which Dr. Bain has endorsed as having some basis in science.
Yeah. You could say that the Curva approach is, and from the start with Wiel Curva, was highly technical, very detailed, very technical, individual skill. René, how does that connect to the game? You know, this kind of isolated practice, and you talked about how it built your confidence, but what is that connection into the game?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a discussion that I had a number of times with Wheel, and Alf and Charlie have developed, you know, a lot of good things to put structure to that Curva coaching method. I've tried to do the same, slightly in a different way. The end goal is the same, is to making sure that you know, you want to hit the kids in the early foundation years where they're very receptive to skill development, but eventually it needs to lead to functionality on the pitch, on the different specific positions they're playing. But what I used to do with Wheel was, because Wheel's focus was so much on that skill development, especially that 1v1, dominating the 1v1, and that's why he got a lot of yes but people. Yeah, but this is all. Yeah, but. And yes, but means people try to find an excuse to sort of not use it or not accept it. And that's why I came up with some sort of a jigsaw puzzle where that skill development element, the technical side, is interlinked with the tactical aspect. Obviously the awareness and understanding of the game, the decision making, the physical aspect of the game. Yeah, the pace, the strength, the agility, the stamina, and also the mental side of the game. Because the confidence and the attitude that the players need to make all those technical aspects of the game happen. So I sort of explained that to Will in basically on a piece of paper, and I just highlighted it by ripping off the corner in the bottom corner on the tactical side. I said, Will, this is what you're focusing on, but we cannot neglect all the rest. This is important, but we need to make sure that the tactical and the physical and the mental aspect is being integrated in some ways in our curriculum, in our drills, exercises, small-sided games, and then into 11v11. And that is basically how I see it.
What was Will's reaction to that?
He thought it was brilliant because because I drew it for him on a piece of paper. I didn't say have a look at this. I drew it for him. And if you drew it for people, I've done the same thing, Mike, with every player at Manchester United to highlight their strengths and weaknesses and what we could add to their game. And it's very, very powerful. And then I color coded it, which makes it even more understandable. So the tactical side is yellow, the physical side is red, the mental side is blue, and the technical area is green. So it's very, very powerful. So when I showed him that, he was he thought it was brilliant, because I said, listen, this is my way of representing your method in the best possible way, and nobody can come back to me and say, yeah, but I try to cover every aspect of it.
Very Alf, yeah, but and the link into the full game has been a big discussion over the last years.
Yes, I think one of the René's spot on here, the yes, but. So I think what we've tried to do over these 40 years is develop, if you like, 4 phase age groups. So the first one, under 7s, is just loving the game, no drills, no game, no coaching really, but so you love the game. And then the second phase, 8 to 12s, is what we call developing the individual core skills: running with the ball, passing, receiving, 1v1. And then the phase 3, 12, they're playing 12v12 nearly all over the world. So you are developing some sort of team style where the player has to have certain skills. And I think that's the first clue, exactly as like René said. Well, if you want to, for example, say possession attacking football, and you can't pass and receive, you can't play possession attacking football. So in phase 1s and 2s, the little ones are built up so that when they go into the team, they have the core skills to play whatever style the coach wants to play. And the phase 4, 17s, 21s for us is a bit more specific, or not specialized, but it's basically zone specific training, so that you train. It's not the position, but the zone. So certainly in the 1v1s, this has some credibility. But then, in the last 30 meters, there's certain things you can do that could create the space and the time for example, for more goal scoring opportunities. So it's more specialized. But René's 100%. Now, from my memory too, because I had a long period with Will, he was acceptable of some of these things, but I think he wanted to make the point, without ball mastery, none of them worked. And so the challenge for us in the last 40 years, to René's point, yes, but, is how do you explain the link between isolated practice and the team game? And so whenever, I do coaches training, because before they can work, I think that you need to understand what you're doing. You understand the topic, if you example. So I think this is a really important, in my opinion, an important thing to be able to explain. How do you explain the link between isolated practice like ball mastery and the team game? And I think we've got an explanation, certainly through the phase groups, and certainly through what René just said now.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Alf. Let's move on then. We hear a lot in coaching about striving for excellence in sport. As coaches, then, what's your thoughts on excellence and how to develop it? René, start with you.
For me, excellence is maximizing potential. Mm. So I've always described, my sort of, if people say, can you describe your way, how you look at football in a short sentence? I would say yes. It's identifying talent, it's developing potential, and then building successful teams. That is a sort of line. So every kid comes in with a certain level of talent. Yeah, and that could be anything. It could be sports, it could be football, but it could also be music. But then with that talent comes a level of potential. And to unlock that potential, these kids need to get exposed to the right environment where they can learn, express themselves, fail, everything that you need to do on the road to progression, really, because that is what excellence is. Excellence is maximizing potential, progression, so that kids feel and players feel I'm getting better at it. We all know the sentence, of the stats, it takes you more than 10,000 hours, to become excellent at something. Practice makes perfect, practice makes permanent. All those things are so true. But that is it. And that excellence obviously shows eventually in good performances. And why are they good performances? Because the excellence makes sure that those players can make a difference. That's what excellence does. So if you look at any sport, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's figure, ice skating, or basketball, or any other sport, or football. And we and that was basically also the starting sort of point from Wheel's philosophy, really, how you build a methodology by looking at the best players. And in his time, that was Di Stefano, Puskas, Beckenbauer, Cruyff, Best, Charlton, Eusebio, those players. And they had a certain level of skill that Wheel identified that other players didn't. But he felt that we need to make sure that we create all that information into a way that we can teach all those other kids that have not that God-gifted talent, but can still be exposed to those, training sessions where they can still, acquire those techniques and still become a very good player.
Yeah. Alf, excellence from the Curva coaching perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and after this, I'd like to ask René a question about that too, especially about Ronaldo. But René mentioned the 10,000 hours, and this was a theory that was attributed to a guy called Anders Ericsson, and a book that hugely influenced me, and I'd recommend to anybody who's interested in coaching, and it's called The Road to Excellence. This was this 10,000 hours theory was that over a 10-year period, when he did this study on violin players. So I'm not sure how relevant it was in Germany, how relevant it was to sport, because if you look at the maths, say for football, you'd have to do 2.5 hours every day for 10 years. Just not, you'd have sore feet at best. But so, and I had the opportunity to speak to Ericsson. He was at the University of Florida, and he didn't say that. He said that wasn't his point. The 10,000 hours wasn't what he was saying. What he was saying was planned, deliberate practice for increasing difficulty. It was the increasing difficulty with that actually produced excellence, if that makes sense. So that required then an expert coach who'd had worked at a level where the coach had seen that excellence. So because you've seen something, and I'm sure René will agree with me, the longer you coach, the more you see. That means the main sort of positive note on that would be, because you've seen it before, you know what it looks like, and therefore you can give expert feedback in real time. And therefore, the coach's role to producing excellence was very important. And so I know we're talking to grassroots coaches, and we're also talking to professional coaches. But when you talk about producing excellence, you're talking of producing a very high level, a player who's already talented, and you need then to take them to the next step. And Eriksen's point was that it wasn't the 10,000 hours. It was planned, deliberate practice of increasing difficulty, which would have implications on your drill DNA design and your session planning. So once you accepted that, then that would have a huge influence on how you design a drill. For example, the variations had to be progressively more difficult, or the session plans during 36 weeks or 46 weeks or whatever you did. So once you accepted Eriksen's principle, so I guess the short answer is I was hugely influenced by Eriksen, and absolutely accept this notion that the expert coach has the ability to give specialized feedback, which then can push a player. And that's what, going back, I want to ask René, when you have a player like Ronaldo, in my opinion and experience, the only way to improve him is to give him something that's increasingly difficult.
René, reflect on your interaction with some of the top players.
No. See, well, when Ronaldo came to United, he was 18, so he had his developmental years from, was it Madeira he come from, and then later from Sporting Lisbon, etc. But he came in as a young 18-year-old on the doorstep to senior football. But he was hugely talented, obviously, we could see that. But there was bags of potential. And for us, it was more to bring Cristiano first and foremost from awareness to understanding. Is he aware about his assets? Is he aware about his technical ability at the moment? And does he understand how to use it? And that is what we call functionality. That was the main thing. There's no point in doing 3 step overs and you're still in the same place and you haven't done anything. It's all about, it needs to be a weaponry. You need to hurt the opposition. It's about breaking lines. It's about getting past opponents. But the biggest drive Ronaldo had was himself. He had such an enormous desire and an enormous commitment, and he knew exactly what he wanted, which obviously I've discussed with him, and I asked him. I told him, I said, I know exactly what you want. And he looked at me like, how can you know? We've never really had the discussion. Yeah, but I know what you want. He said, well, tell me that. I said, you want to become the best player in the world. Not once, twice, maybe for quite some time. He says, and I said, is that right? He said, yes. He says, now the question is, how can we devise a strategy to get there? Because will you be voted the best player of the year tomorrow? He says, no. Next week? No. Next month? No. Maybe in half a year? Probably not. So what do we need to do? And that was eventually, and then what Alf means as well, as it says, and that is how I devised all my sessions. First of all, there always needs to be a purpose to what you do. It doesn't matter whether I'll work individually with a player, with 2 players, with 10 players, or with 30. There's always a purpose, and the players need to understand that purpose. Yeah. The second thing, and that is what Alf means, there's always a challenge in that practice. So there's always that increasing difficulty level. Yeah, what is there? And there can be anything. You can play with spaces, more players, less players, distances, whatever you can do to challenge the players. It could be a football problem, whatever it is. And then within those sessions, in those exercises or in those games, it revolves around 2 things, quality and intensity. And I'm talking here about, all levels, but especially with Manchester United, the level, because if you want to achieve the quality, the intensity needs to be game related. Because if the tempo is too slow, it's not game related. If it's too high, people start to rush and start to make mistakes. So that is a very fine line to get that right. That's where you win things as coaches, if you get that right. So those 4 things are the main things: purpose, challenge, quality, and intensity. If you do that, if you hit them, players will enjoy what they do.
But René, just following on to that, I mean, would you agree with me, because we're giving advice, hopefully for coaches who are interested to listen, that use of a space is probably one of a really powerful tool for us. In other words, reducing space. So really, as a player gets better, you continue to reduce space, which means less time, of course, especially in a full challenge practice. So that the use of space for coaches who really have talented players, keep compressing space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key word to it for coaches is you need to find a way where the players understand the purpose, where they're challenged, but where they achieve success. If the players have success, again, you breed confidence, and that is what you want. And that is my philosophy, where I was always very critical about when I went to visit a lot of coaching courses with national associations. I always felt they coached the negative rather than the positive.
Yes,
you need to coach success. If players do something well, that's when you need to hit them and say that was brilliant, and can you realize why you did that. But the key word is success. If they have success all the time, let's say there's a possession game, and listen, that team never gives the ball away, it's too easy. So you're going to do something with the numbers or the space, whatever you do. But that is the key work. So you need to find the balance where the players need to overcome the challenge, but still achieve a level of success. And if they have success, again, you can progress.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for especially younger kids who can become more discouraged, I think. So, say under 12 years old, especially. And to René's point, the amount of things you hear, I've got, I go and watch my grandsons. They're all under 10. And some of the stuff I hear on the touchline, I mean, I'm banned from saying anything. My daughter and my son don't let me say anything, so I'm banned. But if I could speak, then I'd turn into Will Curver.
No, I can
René knows what I mean by that.
I can see the frustration, and it's sad that it's still happening. But that's why it's important that people like ourselves get those messages across to those young coaches, and they need to create the environment. It's one of the first things that I did when I joined Manchester United in 2001 as a skills development coach. I started to educate the coaches first and foremost, because they needed to understand the purpose of why that skill development program was so important. But secondly, I educated the parents, and I said, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of kids working with the ball themselves, with 2 players, with 3 players, with 4 players. You're going to see all 4 small-sided games, and we want players to dribble. Although you might think that it's better for him to pass, we will not tell him to pass. We want them to experience how those skills work by trial and error, and eventually they will succeed.
Yes. Yeah.
René, you mentioned Ronaldo and about being a highly talented player who obviously made it to the top. So in your experience, why do some talented young players, 15 to 18 years old, make it to the top and others don't? What's the ingredient? Or what's the experience?
I don't think it has anything to do with, some with an ingredient, but what it's more to do with, Mike, is the way that the world of football has changed, and especially the demands, because in other parts of the world, it's easier to basically get through the developmental years and get into, the senior level of football and get opportunities to play, i.e., let's say Holland is a great example. There's a lot of young kids, 17, 18, 19, that play in the Dutch league. They got time. Now, the Dutch league, you cannot compare it with the Premier League, or La Liga, or the Bundesliga. But let's use the Premier League as an example. All those academies have all got talented kids running around, playing under 18s, and then going into the reserves. And then you see a staggering number, a low number of English young players that actually make it into the Premier League, not even in the Championship, League One, League Two. There's such a vast amount of players that don't make it, really, because this is the key word, they don't get the opportunity.
Yeah,
that's it. Yes, because in every kid that's going to be given the opportunity, he will find some sort of a level, especially if they've come through good academies. You're not going to tell me that kids have spent 10 plus years in academies, and in the highly academy, like Manchester United or Man City or Everton or ever mention all those Premier League academies, and all those players. Just think about it, hundreds and hundreds of kids, and they suddenly are not good enough to play in a Championship or League One or League Two. So it's opportunity. That is the biggest thing. I think nowadays, when you get identified, the education, the academies, the coaching, everything is improved tremendously. It's giving kids an opportunity.
I mean, you know, René, such a well put. I spoke to, I worked with Newcastle United's coach educator for a while, and Joe Joyce was the academy manager, and he sent me last week these figures, and I'll read them out because I think that exactly to your point, less than 1% of registered young players at professional academies at the age of 9 go on to become professional footballers. This is the stats from the Premier League. Less than 1%. Only 65% of 15-year-olds at a Premier League club ever get a professional contract. 85% of the above players, these 15-year-olds that get a professional contract, are out of the football, totally out of football by the age of 23. And approximately 30% of the players in the Premier League are British. So this point that René says about opportunities is born out of data. I haven't made these figures up. This is what it is. It's
scary. It's scary, Alf. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Because my youngest son, Melle, was in the academy of Manchester United at the age of 6 or 5 or 6. And he stayed there until he was, I think, 15. He got then released because he was too small. Yeah, he's now 6'7". That was the reason. Yeah. And they had to explain me that. And I'm not an ordinary dad, as you know, but no problem. He then went on to Preston. He played there, which was in some ways good because he saw another environment. Because in Man United, it's probably the best environment you can get as a young player. Everything is catered for, everything. At Preston, still very good, but you play on rubbish pitches at times, different level of football, different level of talent you're playing with. He played there for 2 years. He got given a contract with an option for 1 year. They sent him on loan somewhere up in the north in Lancashire, and not once ever one person from Preston came to watch him. And it was football played between, with all respect, plumbers and postmen and electricians and all that. So the ball spent more time in the air than anything else. So he did that for 6 months. And they were looking for another opportunity. And I said, he's not going to another loan club of that level because it will do him no good whatsoever. They wanted to see if he could handle men's football, right? There was no doubt about it. And then, because I come from Holland, my contacts, throughout just the conversation said, listen, I've got a good opportunity for you. Why don't you bring him here to Holland? Second division team, RKC Waalwijk, small club. He will play every week. He will develop in that way. That was when he was 18. Melle is now 22. He is the captain of the team. He's played over 100 professional games. They got promoted to the Eredivisie 2.5 years ago, and he plays fantastic, important games in the Dutch league every week. If I compare that with the boys he was with at Manchester United, then you come back to the figures that Alf just said. And I think it's less than 10% of the boys that Melle's played with found themselves a spot somewhere on the professional ladder.
And René, I think you'd agree with me. One of the biggest problems then is managing parents' expectations, because, trying to explain those figures to parents, it's almost that they don't believe that. Every player is a top pro.
Yeah, but it is scary. And what the parents see is, they've got this hope that their kid, every parent will think the same. They will think my kid will be in that 1% or 2% or 10%. And great, because they have to make massive sacrifices to bring those kids to the training 3-4 times a week and to the games and this and that and the other. But yeah, at some point, for a lot of kids, that balloon will burst, and they will be massively disheartened. And, my advice is, like I said, you can't talk for everyone in the world, because I do think that if you're lucky enough to let's say, to be born in Holland, you've got a far better chance to go from your developmental years into the senior. And if you're good enough, you get an opportunity to play in the Eredivisie, and you would never get an opportunity to play in England. So that is what I did. with my son, and that's why people like Jadon Sancho went away to Dortmund, and Jude Bellingham, the same ones, because they knew they were giving no chance and opportunity in England.
Yes.
Okay, why don't we move on or move back to another topic? Thanks for that. And it seems like part of it is that this culture of over-promising to kids too, and as you say, René, helping kids find their right level, and that can mean many things, and creating those opportunities. And perhaps, though, as Alf said, with parents, we overpromise, and we over.
But there's one other thing, Mike, which has caused a massive problem now, is Brexit. Because now all those English players cannot just go into Holland or any other EU countries unless they've got different rules. And they cannot just go and find ways and to play there, because otherwise they have to pay an extraordinary amount of a salary.
Yes.
So that road is somehow also blocked off.
Let's talk about the game in general, and we're touching on what high talent players need. Whether they get the opportunity is another thing. But looking back, how do you think the game has changed over the past 20 years, and how do you see it evolving in the future? And what does that mean for players? What additional skill sets might the future player need to succeed in the game and to play the game in a way that they want to play? René, what do you think? What are the changes?
Well, from a logistically point of view, or things that are sort of have influenced the game a lot of the last 20 years, is that there's been a lot of rule changes, like you can't pass back to the goalkeeper, this and that, the other. Introduction of VAR, as we talked about it, there's probably plenty others. There's an enormous increase in better facilities, better stadiums, better football pitches, obviously artificial pitches on which the kids can play and train every day. Training methods obviously have improved, and the technology that goes with it. The analysis side of the game, in terms of how to prepare teams, again, in combination with the technology, it's for everybody there to use. It's a massive tool to record training sessions and to monitor progress of players or teams. The strength and conditioning side of the game has been improved tremendously. Diets, everything goes in it. Sleeping patterns, psychology aspects, blah blah blah. If you then look more to the sort of direct influences on the game in the last 20 years, obviously we've seen a change in tactics. In different systems have been deployed. It's not been as rigid, but one of the things that has definitely made a massive introduction and a difference is the pressing game. The 5-second rule. We've heard about that. Win the ball back. This and that and the other. The speed of the game has increased tremendously. The current players are all top athletes because of the strength and conditioning side of the game. They're all quick. They're all fit. They're all strong. They maximize every opportunity to not only make it the best possible footballer, but make it the best possible athlete to play the game from a physical point of view. But then we come to the same point, and that will never change. What does these players need? The demands are higher, the challenges are bigger. So therefore, you need better and more skillful players. Because in the past, it was the players that I mentioned before, Di Stefano, Puskas, Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Best, Maradona, Pele, all of them, that made the difference because they dominated the 1v1. And especially in an attacking sense. That has not changed and will never change. However, this and a few other important aspects of the game are undervalued and undertrained. So why are we all so hyped up about Mo Salah from Liverpool? Because he can run with the ball, he can dribble with the ball, he can go past players, he's unpredictable, he's just fucking brilliant to watch. Now, why is there only one Mo Salah? Yeah, maybe Bowen, a similar trait, who plays for West Ham. Yeah, and then maybe you can find another one. But like I said, if you really start to look again, what we did throughout the decennia, you always only come with a handful or maybe 10 world-class players that dominate that aspect of the game and therefore are the difference makers in that team. The other aspects is what also is undertrained and undervalued is finishing and finishing practices. Yeah, I've asked that same questions to the forwards of the Australian national team and asked them how many times they do extra finishing or work on individual skill in getting past people or do extra finishing to put the ball in the back of the net. Again, staggering numbers. Hardly ever or never. At Manchester United, there was a main thing that we did when Ferguson told me when I became the first team coach from an attacking sense. This is what I want to see when I see United play. Yeah, I want to see us attack with pace, power, penetration, and unpredictability. And this is what I want you to instill in those sessions with those players and their teams every game. We did finishing sessions every day, Mike. And now, because whatever, the power of the strength and conditioning and this and that and the other, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. So for me, the skill set is still the same. There needs to be an emphasis that the players can meet the technical challenges and the demands of the modern game. You need to be able to dominate that 1v1, whether you are left back, right back, centre mid, or forward. And secondly, turn those opportunities into goal scoring chances and put it in the back of the net. Those are the main things for me.
Alf, I know you're going to build on that. You did a recent webinar called The Winning Zone and also The Future Game. And it particularly looked at how players learn the skill set, particularly for the final third. And for what René said, how you finish and turn all that hard work into results. Just want to go ahead and give a quick outline of that.
Yes. Well, there was two previous podcasts, one with my dear friend who's passed, Gerald Houllier. Remember, Gerald and I did the future game, or our thoughts on the future game. I think René's described it beautifully. I would say that what's happened also in these 20 years is that teams are keeping possession of the ball for longer, and even grassroots coaches or players are trying to do that. Of course, it's very difficult unless you've got a good degree of core skills. And the other thing is, and to this regard, possession and possession being important. Charlie and I devised a new product. It's called Curve Coaching Rondos, and we filmed it. And if people are interested, that's out. Regarding the winning zone, what René's describing. So what Charlie and I have devised is a program called the Winning Zone. It's the last 30 meters of the field, where 99.9% of goals are scored, and trying to write a program for coaches, exactly like René said, so they can work in this zone where all the goals are scored. And you've got two parts: creating and converting. So for the younger players, let's put heading, because heading's a totally different issue and requires a different discussion. But so converting is mainly shooting, but creating is individual and in small groups, individually be 1v1. So in Curve Coaching, we've got 4 what we call mirror moves. These are where you can beat a player on both sides. Out of 79, only 8 actually work like that. And so we've written a program. It'll be filmed soon, and it's going to be called The Winning Zone. And it's exactly what René said was important. So, I think because René and I think so much alike, and obviously we've been influenced together, that what he said, we've tried to also develop products for coaches on.
René, I think it's obvious the way you talk in terms of the kind of team style that you like to see has very much an attacking focus to it. That's probably an oversimplification, but give us an idea of, as a coach, how you visualize your team style. And is there one, or does that depend on the team that you're coaching?
Yes, and it depends on what level, what competition you're in. You're playing at home, you're playing away, you're playing semi-finals, finals. There's so many variables that have a thing, but in general, that is what I think you're looking for. For me, it's all about the intent. what it would do that, it does not really too much about system or what system. Any system can work for the players if it suits the players and the qualities that they have. Whether it's a 4-4-2, a 4-4-1-1, a 4-3-3, 3-5-2, whatever you come up with, that doesn't matter. For me, it's about the intent, and the intent should be is based on what we were always trying to do with United, is that possession based, taking the control of the game. But it's always look at where can we create the extra man, through rotations, players dropping in, leaving space, other ones following in. How can we turn that possession into breaking lines? And how can we now get into that creating part of the field, what Alf was talking about, and then convert those chances? It's all about the intention. And that is not only about when you're having the ball, it's about also how you defend. And again, that depends. Sometimes for us, it was, we press high up on the pitch. That means you have to play with a high line with a lot of space in behind. Can we do that? Yeah, we can do that because the opposition have got no pace. No problem. You know what I mean? So those are the tactical differences. So systems are not too much important. It's all about, whatever system suits the players best. It's the intention. And then obviously the strategies that you can deploy. You can play with a right winger all the time, but I can play with right winger that is very good in beating a man on the outside and putting the cross in, where the other right winger is better in coming inside in the pocket, where the fullback goes over the top. It's all about intention, and the intention should be always a positive one. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that sometimes, because if you're really honest with yourself, I want to play possession, but I know the opposition is better, so I'm not going to have that possession. I'm going to spend more time in transition and defending. Now, then you have to put an intent in there. So, okay, what is the intent here? And again, is that a positive intent? Let's make sure that we not get opened up easily. Make sure that we keep the shape right. Make sure that the distances are right. And that can equally be as good to watch as anything. Everybody always talks about, I want to play an attacking and an attractive style. That's great. Yeah, that's great. Everybody wants that. But if Southampton comes up against Man City, then I can bet a bottom dollar that Man City has got 70% of the ball. So that I think you need to see that in perspective. So I would always, like I said, bring it back to the intentions. And those intentions are, like we said with Manchester United, it was all about possession, it was all about rhythm, it was all about finding the extra man through rotations, it was all about breaking lines. And then when we got into the attacking phase, pace, power, penetration, unpredictability. That was the recipe.
When René beautifully described, I'll tell you what, not because René's here, but for me, if you talk about football style, as a football fan, and I'm old enough to remember Rinus Michels and Cruyff's total football, where players interchanged, Cruyff suddenly would take the ball from the goalkeeper. And René and I never grew up with that sort of thing. If you were playing number 8, you'd never go near the goalkeeper, for example. And so to me, that would be my football model. What Rinus Michels and Cruyff later on, and I guess Guardiola to a degree, that would be my football style. Players interchanging, everybody is an attacker, everybody's a defender, nobody's got a number on their shirt, they're number 6 and number 11.
In talking about styles and beliefs and vision, and we come to that later, Mike, but see, for me, I had the pleasure to have a long discussion with Pep Guardiola, actually before he became a coach. He was actually on trial at Manchester City at the time, and we had a player in the same hotel, and that's how I started to chat with him. And we started talking. It says for me, I said to him, Pep, I want to develop players the way that Curver sees it. I said Holland has produced two really exceptional football people, and one is Curver, because in my opinion, that is the way I would like to develop my players. And number 2 is Johan Cruyff, and I would like to have my teams play with the same intentions as he has. Yeah, so that try to mix that together, you got a success formula. Then obviously I've had the opportunity to work for 6 years alongside or with Sir Alex Ferguson, and I've tried basically those 2 elements that I just talked about, sort of help them to sort of integrate in the style of Man United. And like Alf says, about Pep Guardiola, and I'm a big Pep Guardiola fan, but I'm also a big Jurgen Klopp fan. And if you look at those two teams now, they've got a very strong culture, but more than anything, an identity that they've created over the last few years. Pep Guardiola with City, I would call it almost a keyhole surgery. Yeah, it's all small passes in interchanging, like Alf says, moving players different position and tick, 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 and as many passes as they can to try to basically unlock those defenses. Where Jurgen Klopp is equally as exciting but different. It's all based on high energy, dynamic, strong, direct, clinical, but equally. And I think at the time when I was working with Sir Alex, we had a bit of both. We could switch between both elements. That was our identity, in my opinion. So yeah, again, you come back with that same word, intent, but I like both of those styles.
It seems like, René, too, if you talk about the future player or the current player, young players, this idea of being mentally flexible and being able to understand it's almost like you have to understand a lot more kind of opportunities or variations, and teaching players to think has got to be a big part of that. And how young does that start besides the technical work?
No, but it's easier because the young player now is a complete different animal. When I was 8 or 9 years of age, I only had one source of information, was the coach telling me, and maybe sometimes showing me, yeah. And on the odd occasion, we could watch, football that was played in a game. And if you did clever enough, you would not just watch the game for the sake of entertainment. I would watch the game to see what Johan Cruyff was doing with the ball, and I would try to copy it. The young kid now have got access to so much different sources, to learn outside their regular training sessions, and they take information on board in so many different ways. That development can really be sped up because of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, René, wouldn't it be just to imagine holding a telephone in our pocket when we were kids?
Honestly, you didn't know you were on the training pitch playing with your friends, and you had no clue. But you heard the clock tower. You hear the clock tower go 6 times, and you knew you had to get home because food would be on the table.
Yeah,
that was it.
Well, I had a lot of cold dinners, I'll tell you that.
So look, you both mentioned skillful players, aware players, exciting players. You have to be effective. So our role as coaching organizations is to help develop that in young players. So what role in football education, sort of as a summary, do you think the Curva coaching curriculum and method can play in the future and should play? And any experience in different countries where you see that influence could really impact the football? Alf, I'll start with you. In terms of what's your kind of vision as Curva coaching and what you want to bring to the future of football education?
Well, first, kind of an overview. So over these 40 years, we started in 1984. Since that, we have activities in 51 countries. We work with 17 federations, over 50 pro clubs as coaching instructors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the Curva program is well established over these 40 years, and with people like René, who's one of ours, it's the credibility is there. I take René's point, if I can use René's point. You can have all the sports scientists, and you can have all the great fields and the money that's invested. But when we're talking about team style and the importance of these 1v1 players, and they're the players that probably could cause the difference or be the difference. And then can you develop them? Or, one of the things when I first started and was influenced by Will Curver was the fact that, okay, you can't create Cruyff, but you can show a young kid some of the skills of Cruyff, and they can do that. So it's not creating Cruyff, but it's using the skills and improving that young player's skills using that model. So I think it'll always have a place, I think. And the fact that we're in 51 countries already and we have activities in those countries, I think, of course, Mike, one thing is I know what I don't know, and what I don't know is a lot. But over 40 years, I've learned some things, and my heart is in a young player development. That means from, say, 6 years old to 18 or 17. That's where I focus on. So one thing I would like to do is sort of keep adding to the program. I've learned a lot from René, talking with him today. And I want to, as long as I'm fit and healthy, keep trying to learn more things to make Curver coaching better. Not better as far as we're better than anybody else, but just relevant. And I think René described better than me, why Curver coaching is relevant. If Guardiola and Alex Ferguson, and I know Alex, the first time I went to Manchester United was when Brian Kidd was head of the academy, and Ferguson had asked him, he wanted Curver at the club. And to get when René joined the club and became, one of the best coaches the club have ever had, that was another endorsement of Curver. Of course, it was.
Yeah.
René, in the bigger picture of coach education, you're now national team coach in Australia, so you probably then get to know a lot about the youth program in Australia. Where's the Curver and the Curver type thinking play for the future?
For me, Mike, every kid, every boy or girl at the ages from maybe as young as maybe 3 or 4 years of age, all the way up to 12 and beyond, they should get an opportunity to get influenced by Curver coaching and the skills. It is absolutely mandatory if we want to keep the high level of the game, producing the players that can meet the technical demands of the modern game. What you see now is, why are there so, and I keep saying it again, why are there so few players, and obviously Messi and Ronaldo, they're coming to the end of careers, but Neymar's, Mbappe, Salah's, all those skillful players that excite you, that make the difference because they can go past people. So the majority are one-directional and one-dimensional players. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the game, and I see it every single time, a player gets a ball, he travels in a particular direction, and he will not change that direction because he hasn't got the tools to do so. So he will, 10 out of 10, plays that ball into the direction he's facing. So very one-dimensional. Yeah. Whereas players that have the ability to do an inside hook turn or an outside hook turn or a Cruyff turn, they suddenly change the whole angle of attack. And that is what we would want to achieve. And what Curver coaching would achieve is developing multi-directional players, multi-dimensional players. So what would bring that to the game is unpredictability. And unpredictability, you cannot defend. And that is what those players, those world-class players of past and present have shown us. The only thing is for us is to make sure that we create more of them because the game demands more of them. Yeah. So for me, the Curver coaching, the technical skills development programs are vital for young kids to get exposed to. So every federation, every club that I would sort of have an influence on. But the thing is it's not as easy as I said, because I had to develop an army of coaches at Man United when I came in. I had to educate them, and they started to believe me. Every training sessions we did, week on, and then suddenly they started to see the evidence of those young kids expressing themselves in the 4v4 programs, and then basically starting to really get better at it. And then when they had to play 8v8, because the rules said they had to play 8v8, then still they did the same things, but then more in the positions. And then you see those players coming through, like the Danny Welbecks, the Tom Cleverley, Jesse Lingard, Marcus Rashford, Greenwood, all in Manchester United first team, all internationals. Yeah, and they went through that skills development program. And exactly what I did is what Alf is doing. You know, there's no difference. It might have a different name, whatever. But I've always been a big advocate of Curva coaching and what they do. And it will always be because I believe in it.
Alf, thank you, René. Alf, maybe just we're going to finish up in a few minutes. Building on that, your experience, again, always learning, and implementing Curva in different places with Gerard Houllier, and one as a mentor coach, but also the difference that you saw after working with Gerard for a few years of the influence of Curva on the development of the French national football education program.
Yeah, so I always think of him, still to this day, miss him. So I worked about 12 years with Gerard, and in France then there was 8 centres, which Clairefontaine was a Paris centre, but we travelled to all of the centres, and his sort of what he wanted was coaches of the kids 8 to 12 years old, especially, to have to upgrade the sort of the content that they're taught, and that goes to what René's point about coaches' education and the great job he did at Manchester United. I try to do a similar job with the French Federation, and more or less over 12 years we worked, and I think we influenced a lot of French coaches. And still to this day in the library at Clairefontaine is the 1v1 and the ball mastery exercises that we did over those 12 years, and it's still used as a standard sort of technical part of youth coaching in France. So I think look, like René and I were influenced by Will. I mean, you meet so many great, and to René with Alex and so many. René, you just started. He talked with Pep Guardiola. He has all these wonderful sort of conversations which he learns, and I've had the same. And Gerald, and I would say that Arsene Wenger falls in the same category. Jurgen Klinsmann, during his time at Bayern Munich, I was the coach's educator. These are people that you kind of like, you admire, you know, they're also your heroes, but then you kind of understand that how little, not little you know, but how much you can learn. And to all the coaches, I just say, look, find a mentor. I mean, if you have a chance to have somebody like René to talk to, what better education, you know, it's better than a license, you know, or I'm not discouraging people to do their licenses, but I mean, find somebody who's done it and then speak to them, and you can hear from what René said. And I put him up there as, of course, I'm very proud of him because, you know, I remember when he first started out, and look where he is and what he's done for himself. So, you know, find a mentor like him, listen to them, and it's as good as any education you're going to get.
René, just in the last minute then, any last words of advice particularly for young coaches, you know, stepping into loving the game, wanting to develop their talent in coaching? Any last words of advice from you?
Yeah, I'd like to follow on what Alf just said, and it's so true. That find people to talk to, and you know, the mentors are so important. But more than anything, you know, you have to do your licenses and all that. But there's so many sources now you can draw knowledge from, and I would always say that was always my driven thing. It was all based on common sense, and it was all by keep analyzing the best. They are the best for a reason. Try to identify why they are the best. If you know that, and that's for players and that's for coaches, yeah. And from that, all that information, build a philosophy, a vision that you believe in. Not because somebody else tells you that's the right thing. It's not work. You have to believe in it. I went to the Dutch association who had a different vision about things than I did. Yeah. And I just, and 90% of the people just walk away and just say, yeah, let's do it. I didn't, because they fell short on that curve work and the 1v1. And I went that way. And if I would have not went that way, I would have never got and achieved what I've done. But and that's why I can so passionately speak and easily speak, because I believe in what I say. And that is the most important thing for coaches. And that is what also Sir Alex Ferguson had. That is what Johan Cruyff had. That is what Pep Guardiola had. That is what Jurgen Klopp had. They have their own beliefs, their own vision, their own philosophy. And that's why they are successful.
René, thank you for that passionate ending. And thank you, Alf and René, for your time, for your passion, and most of all, for your willingness to share to our audience. So we wish you well. And again, thanks for being with us.